Welcome to the Investor Readiness Podcast, hosted by Dobson and DeMario McIlwain.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Investor Readiness Podcast. As you know, Skilldora, we provide all types of online trainings, whether you're looking to get into AI, but most importantly for this podcast right here, are you a small business who's looking to master your fundraising strategy, to connect with investors, to actually have a real pitch scenario to an investor so they can give you feedback? Well, that's what we're doing today. We're calling this the Investor Readiness Live, or IRP Live. And to learn more about the Investor Readiness, make sure you go to getinvestorready.com. But here, I'm DeMario McIlwain, your host, and my sidekick right here.
I'm Tonto, Eric Dobson.
Hey, Eric, I tell you, this is going to be an exciting day today, man. We're actually going to have some founders pitch to you live, and you know you're the man. So therefore, I know that you're going to listen to that pitch, give some feedback, and let these founders know what time it is when it comes to speaking with an investor. Sounds exciting, right?
Hey, listen, I was an entrepreneur for a decade. I pitched and raised a lot of money. So I remember the process. I remember the butterflies in the stomach before you took the stage. I remember, having to get past awkward moments when things, whatever happens, technology screws up, whatever it is. And, you're doing the deformed rabbit shadow puppets on the wall, trying to keep people talking and entertained. And yeah, it can be a little intimidating.
Well, let me ask you, have y'all ever done this before? Like, have you ever had a virtual, like Shark Tank style investor pitch?
Good question. During COVID, we did a bunch of virtual pitches with our members. And it's one thing to get on just one-to-one. It's a whole different thing when you got 20 people on a Zoom trying to ask questions of an entrepreneur. So yeah, we've done the live virtual Shark Tank thing before. And I hate to use Shark Tank, but because the real world doesn't work like that. But you get the idea. So yeah, we have done it before, and it is fun. You can learn a lot. So yeah, it's a good process.
Well, y'all know I like to say Shark Tank all the time because we're trying to disrupt Shark Tank. That's right, you heard it. Damon, Mr. Wonderful, Mark Cuban. Well, Mark Cuban left. Robert, Lori, Barbara, and whoever else you have on the show. The network need to hire us because our show is going to be banging. We're online. That's right, online. Shameless plug. But anyway, Eric, this is going to be an exciting day. We have two great founders coming up. So let's not even delay. Are you ready?
Absolutely. Bring them on.
Well, let's bring up our first founder.
Our first founder on IRP Live is Hester Paewitz, CEO of Trustivio. Hester brings over 25 years of experience in healthcare governance and compliance with leadership roles at Kaiser Permanente and Northwell Health. Trustivio is her solution to a massive gap in the industry. Hester has now entered into the IRP Live studio, and her time has been set. Let's view a few highlights from her pitch. The clock starts now.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here today. I want to give you just a quick summary of my history. I've worked in healthcare, quality, risk, compliance, etc., at every level of organizations and at every kind of organizations imaginable. I've worked at behemoths like Kaiser Permanente. I've worked at independent medical practices during an acquisition, no less, and I've worked in behavioral health. And every one of those organizations have the same problem. We work in silos. Our tools are clunky. And even as a chief quality and compliance officer, my own team started out there in their own little silos and couldn't share information. So I set out to create the tool that I and my colleagues never had. I'll let that sink in for a second. These are not cherry-picked horror stories. These are real headlines from real organizations. And these 6 headlines are only a tiny drop in the bucket. They may look like your typical old compliance issues, but the reality goes much deeper. We should ask ourselves, why? Why was CVS fined $949 million for invalid prescriptions? Why did Steward Health fail with $9 billion in debt? Why was Change Health vulnerable to a $2.82 billion cyber attack? And most importantly, why do so many hundreds of thousands of people still die every year because of error? It all boils down to trust. The big ones, NAVEX, SAI 360, these are all great compliance tools, but they're not built for healthcare. Our good enough tools are really not good or enough. Our systems and our people don't talk to each other, and this is by design. People gatekeep information in the ruse of confidentiality, but really it's not about confidentiality, it's all about trust. Do you think that the regulators that we work with care that each of us does our own little work in the silo? No. Every single one of those headlines happened because there's this disconnect. And then, of course, because of profit. But what makes us so special? What makes Trustivio so special? First of all, we are a healthcare platform. We are built for healthcare by healthcare professionals. We unify quality, risk, safety, compliance, accreditation, and licensing into one secure, immutable source of truth, and therefore trust. We have cutting-edge new protocols that will make it blockchain protected, and our AI agents continuously scour the regulatory sites for changes, and it automatically updates our policies and then notifies the owner that the policy has been updated and is ready for approval. And finally, Trustivio gives real-time, cross-functional data visualization to help our leaders identify and mitigate issues proactively. So really what I want for you to know from our problem and our solution statement is that there is nothing like this right now on the market. The things that are in there, not healthcare. Trustivio is the thing that is going to solve that problem. It's also a pretty big market opportunity. Globally, the TAM as $93 billion, it's huge. Our SAM, which at $1.4 trillion, you might say, whoa, Hester, you're really inflating this right now. But it's really to show the totality of the healthcare revenue and the size of the market that we're trying to penetrate here. So very conservatively, we actually target our ARR at about $75 million in the first year. So that's if we get 600 customers and they have ACV of about $125K a year. It's conservative, I know, and it's especially conservative if you consider that non-compliance is even more expensive. And also, we're only counting right now healthcare, hospitals and health systems into our consideration. And then, of course, our beachhead strategy is to first introduce our policy hub and our incident portal, and then expand into our GRC suite. Why does Trustivio work? As I said, NAVEX and SIA 360 are great tools. They're well known. They're really good tools, actually, but they're industry agnostic. They're compliance first. And healthcare is just a module. It's kind of sort of bolted on module. RL Datrix, on the other side, they are healthcare focused, but they're pretty narrow. They really look only at incident reporting and risk management. The others, as you can see, really not as much of a competition for us. So I won't go into depth with them. Our business model is pretty much a basic tiered subscription-based software service. But from a small independent practice to a behemoth enterprise, there's an option that matches the organization's complexity and risk. So this is my favorite slide of all. This is the platform. This is Trustivio. 8 modules right now in one integrated platform. These modules are all interoperable, so it means they can talk to each other. They can make collaboration possible between the functions, between the people, between the departments. Marketing. My first strategy, I have to tell you, is going to be hiring a marketing professional. I had no idea how much time marketing can take. So our get to market strategy really focuses on trust. Again, trust. Also on experience and credibility. So our strategy is balanced. We focus really more on thought leadership, social media, industry events, and then also some SEO and SEM.
Hester has finished her pitch. Although each founder is given 15 minutes to present, the IRP team has allowed Hester to go over time in order to complete her presentation. Now she will go through a Q&A session along with feedback from Eric Dobson, the CEO of Community Equity Partners. Let's see what Eric has to say.
Okay, you still spend a lot of time talking about the tech up front, and so it would be nice to take some of that out in favor of the business model stuff in the back. But again, with the little extra time we got through all that. The big and I will ask you, one of the first questions obviously I'm going to ask about is in the tech space. I did a major project with a healthcare system one time, and I was shocked and horrified about how information is maintained within the walls of those entities. They had 3 different accounting systems. I think there were at least 2 or 3 different EHR systems. They were all over the place, and to the point that, I mean, to the old, information technology guy, I was like, oh my God, how does this even work? I mean, I was, and there's a lot of hand holding and manual, things that go on to keep that system, kludged together. So, I mean, how do you sit in the middle of that and organize all that information? And there's a lot of people are happy to tell you that, the information, again, well, actually, let me back up. The whole system was designed for one thing: reimbursement, not patient health, not patient outcomes, not understanding actuals. It was all about one thing: maximizing reimbursement. So how do you tackle that?
I've lived it. I have literally lived it. I've been part of mergers and acquisitions where we were a small little mental health practice, a small little medical group, and we got bought up by a bigger company. And our tiny little EHR and our tiny little tools, they all were not really integratable. And that's really why I'm doing this, because that was the biggest frustration of my career. It really was. It was this inability to get the information across. It was the inability for people to realize that if you look at compliance and quality, if you make sure your governance is in order, if you have systems that actually talk to each other, you're gonna make more money. And that's really, for me, the driver behind what I'm doing. And that's why I'm starting small. That's why I'm starting with one organization that currently is living that. They had a merger and acquisition about 5 years ago. It was 2 systems that combined into one. And they had the hardest time to try to integrate. And in the end, they really weren't able to integrate because they didn't have a tool. And so this tool, I strongly believe, will grow into that.
Okay. So, I mean, just technically, how do you get the data out of these systems so you can even start to measure compliance?
Magic. No. So we use all manner of analytics and things, visualization tools and techniques that are integrated into our system. So our initial prototype that we've been working on right now sits on Caspio, which is I'm sure you're familiar if you've ever gone to make a hotel reservation on Marriott. you've used Caspio. So that because they are HIPAA secure, because they're interoperable, because they have all of the AI capability, they have the integrations with Python, with Power BI, with all of Tableau, with all of these visualization techniques, it's really easy to get the data out there. And then when you add to that the SCID technology, so what SCID does, without getting too deeply into the supply chain part of it, but really it's also applicable to healthcare. So SCID basically takes all of that massive amount of data that you get in. So if you look at your revenue cycle, for instance, all of those massive amount of claims that come in, all of the quality care instances that come in, it takes each of those and it sort of parses them out, and it magically, in my mind, because I'm not that person to do all of this work, that's my good friend Thomas. So that SCID protocol really takes that data and turns it into bits of information that you can then use and put together in a way to tell your story. And that's really my best way of explaining how I plan on making all of this sort of work together.
Let's switch gears and talk a little more about the sort of the beachhead strategy. You said you're launching one of your tools as the beachhead strategy, and you've got one healthcare system that you worked with before with an LOI. I think that's amazing. You're going to learn a tremendous amount from that activity. But if you think about a beachhead strategy, are you thinking about launching this into smaller healthcare systems, for instance, that are looking to be acquired, and making them readily integratable? I mean, what's the target customer in that beachhead strategy?
Absolutely. So yes, our target customer are sort of those people that those organizations that don't have what we can offer. So by that I mean, say for instance, the behavioral health organization that I was the chief quality and compliance officer for. They don't have any tools, yet they are looking to acquire some other smaller mental health organizations, group homes, etc. And so they would be my perfect candidate because they're in that strategic planning, strategic development process. And when you do this is the best time to just integrate everything at one time. So those are definitely a big start for me. Also, the smaller practices are, for me, always the ones that are sort of left behind. The tools are really expensive. I mean, Navex can be hundreds of thousands of dollars to subscribe. It's kind of ridiculous. So when we start small with, say, a policy management tool, because just that alone, 1,700 Joint Commission standards, each of those is basically a policy. So if we can get something that can automatically manage those so that your staff can then actually do work in the reality of it, those are the people that I'm looking for right now. Of course, I'm also chatting with the chief compliance officer of Northwell. I'm also, looking at my network with Kaiser Permanente, because those are the big ones, and the big ones carry a lot of clout. And when they invest in you, it's a pretty good thing.
Yeah, exactly. Excellent. Tell me more about the AI part of this. So what are you using AI specifically to do? I get the blockchain part, integrity, information integrity, but tell me what AI is doing in the middle of all this.
That's kind of my most exciting part. Mm-hmm. And DeMario and I have talked about this at great length, and we both have geeked out on it at great length. So basically, the AI powered is going to be, it's mostly agentic AI that is learned or taught to scour the regulatory sites, because there are a bajillion of them. And then there are all the sites that do the commentary on the regulatory sites. There are the law groups that have their say about how we should be implementing all of these things. There are the accreditation organizations. And my AI agent, I'm working on getting it to really go deep into, because some of the government, the government organizations don't really like it when robots look at their work. But we're working to get beyond that. So the AI really is, for the policy management platform at least, sort of the backbone right now because of that automation. Because anybody can do an Excel spreadsheet and a SharePoint for their policies. Okay, it's clunky, it's whatever, but it kind of works. But if you can actually get notified of changes as they happen. So my AI agent currently, I do a morning brief with her. I call her Athena because, I like the Greek goddesses. So I say to her, Athena, give me a status today. And then Athena will give me a list of all the regulatory things that happened over the last, whatever time I tell it to give me. And it's really interesting because it's funny because I did that. The first time I did that, she came up with, the Joint Commission is changing the entire way they do surveys. Yeah. I had no idea because they haven't really publicized it. So it's like, oh, wow. So organizations are going to have to change all of their policies now to make sure that it meets all of these new standards. So that's where my AI comes in because it really helps me by finding these things. It's like my gossip monger almost, and I'm really proud of it, quite honestly.
Yeah, that's good. I guess the other question I've got is, I think I would agree that most healthcare systems know they need to have some kind of automated compliance.
Yep.
The challenge is, and I saw this in that one project. Granted, it's a survey of one, so it's only one data point, but there was almost a sense of pride that they could actually make the system work as badly as it was kludged together. So how do you change that mindset? What's the the magic tipping point that convinces them to go in on a solution versus we haven't even talked about the stovepiping of data centers inside these organizations and the people that have their own little fiefdoms of data.
Yep.
I mean, but how do you convince them to switch mindsets and buy?
Through experience. So for me, it's really through experience. Yes, it's great talking to, the CEO and the CFO of a company, but they really don't know what goes into making these systems run poorly. People like me who have done the work, who have ran those systems and who have come up against that gatekeeping, who have tried to get into the fiefdom. I'm not the only one. There's a bajillion of us out there, and I just need to talk to the right person. The compliance officer who is afraid of tech and who has done the same thing in the same way for years. I kind of have that head up against some of the others where I can say, hey, you know what? If we do it this way, what if we can? What if you do it so-and-so? What if it makes it easier for you? No, AI is not going to steal your job. AI is going to make your job easier. So it's really in the relationship building with the people who do the work. And that, to me, is like the easy part. The marketing is the hard part.
Yeah, I guess the other question is, have you come up with an ROI number? I mean, by doing this, you're going to save? I mean, because I always see that. I also lecture in many venues, one of which is I teach a college class on entrepreneurship, and I always tell them there are really only 4 reasons companies buy: make money, save money, satisfy regulatory, or brand protection, and essentially brand building and brand protection.
So next up, we actually have another founder. Her name is Danita. So let's learn more about Danita.
Next up, we have Danita Williams, founder and president of DMW Consultants. Danita has built a career helping organizations align employee data with strategic decision-making. Her company tackles costly HR challenges like misclassification, pay inequities, and compliance risks. Danita has now entered into the IRP Live studio, and her time has been set. Let's view a few highlights from her pitch. The clock starts now.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you for this opportunity to speak with you about compensation automation and how it can transform how businesses can use it more effectively. My name is Danita Williams, and I am the president and founder of DMW Consultants, your compensation solution. So today I'm going to talk about how automating compensation data analytics can transform decisions and how business leaders can make more effective decisions. Because when it's not leveraged proactively and it doesn't drive strategy, bad decisions can happen. And our solution aims to turn employee data into a powerful driver of foresight, efficiency, and profitability. So the problem is the pain point. Every bad business decision traces back to bad data. Bad data in, bad data out. Bad data equals bad analytics. And it doesn't matter how pretty the presentation is, how beautiful the charts are. The data means nothing if the data is based off of incorrect or misaligned data. So when reactive decisions are made, they can be very, very expensive. Misclassification penalties, as I said earlier, can cost millions of dollars. Compression issues, they can undermine leadership credibility. Pay inequity can drive turnover and retention risk. Employees paid below the minimum, they are like a back pay liability. And any one of these problems can, again, erode employee trust, expose companies to unplanned and unnecessary liabilities, which can distract from growth. Right now, what a lot of companies are doing, they are engaging in manual efforts. This is kind of the current state, and this is from a reactive position. Leaders are constantly in firefighting mode. There's no foresight, no consistency to plan ahead. Leaders are not making decisions collectively, jointly, because one decision in one business unit can impact another business unit. There's no idea of what another business leader is doing. They're operating in a vacuum. They have decentralized processes. So these are short-term fixes like Band-Aids and bubblegum, which are not sustainable. So this is where we come in, DMW Consultants, with offering compensation automation. Now, organizations, when they have performance ratings, they can align to, say, a standard bell curve. We can predict what our merit budget should be. We can calibrate our internal bell curve against a standard bell curve, whatever that may be, because not everybody's going to walk on water. Not everybody's going to be exceeds or consistently exceeds. The majority of the organization should be in the middle of the bell curve. And this is how we can start to predict some things. So when we talk about forecasting the future, we can model, merit, budget. This is where forecasting can be kind of the real transformation, where you can do budget predictability, instead of scrambling at year end to, model. When you're scrambling at year end when budgets are already set and you're trying to correct some things, correct somebody's who's below minimum, correct a compression issue. That's one thing that would definitely drive an employee out of an organization, is when their direct report is making more than them. So the market opportunity is massive. The HR tech space is booming, will continue to boom, potentially exceeding $50 billion globally in the next 3 to 5 years. Organizations are already spending millions of dollars annually on compliance fixes, emergency budget corrections, turnover costs, etc. So we want to position ourselves as a proactive alternative, not just offering a solution, but offering financial protection and a path to sustainable growth. The business model is simple: a SaaS subscription layered with consulting integration, where the ROI for business leaders is tangible. Reduce compliance risk, reduce penalties, control budget with no surprises. You can kind of forecast and see what may be coming, and again, react proactively versus reactively, in addition to having lower. So there are competitors out there that I'm familiar with, I've used before, that will do merit merit planning, sales comp, design. I do all of that as well. The one thing that I found that my competitors do not do is offer the plans, the program design, the templates to, implement a promotion policy, a merit planning cycle, calendar, offer letters. So I provide all of the content to align with your pay practice. You need a compression process, I can help implement that. A sales compensation plan, every component of pay. So I'm not just going to build a tool, I'm going to make sure the tool aligns with your strategy, with your comp program design.
Danita has finished her pitch. Although each founder is given 15 minutes to present, the IRP team has allowed Danita to go over time in order to complete her presentation. Now she will go through a Q&A session along with feedback from Eric Dobson, the CEO of Community Equity Partners. Let's see what Eric has to say.
Yeah, okay. Let me ask you just a couple of general questions.
Sure.
One of the things when we think about venture investing, what we really want to see is some kind of geometric increase in revenue with a linear increase in resources. So staff and things like that.
Okay.
So one reason that quote unquote consultancies are generally not regarded as venture investable and not because they're not generally regarded as scalable. So you've got a software platform. So you basically have a software automation system for companies to maintain a level setting and risk management in the compensation space. I just want to confirm that that's true.
Have it built in Excel. I'm looking for an investment to kind of build that in the SaaS software platform so that I could offer it one-stop shop in different tiers based on the amount of data that a company has. Because over the course of my career in the different organizations that I have worked at, each one of these organizations has looked at one of these components independently. Compression, below minimum structure, FLSA misclassification. I haven't found an organization yet that looks at everything from A to Z.
Right.
And when you look at these solutions, sometimes independently, you're missing opportunities in other areas. So my solution is designed as a one-stop shop along with the aligned documentation, policy, and program design.
Okay. Gotcha. So I guess the other thing is, I always tell people, start with your why. Why do you get up in the morning? Why is this critical to you? Why is this critical for the world? What's the short why? Why do you do this?
My why is because when I wake up in the morning and I want to make sure that employees are paid for their contribution to the organization, because when employees are paid competitively, they will come to work and show up and do their best work. Because when employees feel valued, they will make the company better with profitability, and then the profitability from that company can be shared back to them. Like we're paid well, we get bonuses, we have great benefits and everything. Because I've learned that over the years, when employees feel undervalued, they're not paid what they're worth, or if they're not going to show up and do their best work, and it leads to the business owner hemorrhaging money because that person is going to leave. The company needs to replace that person. It erodes employee morale because the work still needs to get done. And it's going to cost that company more money to replace that person, along with all of the other intrinsic costs that they invested in that employee, than to just, say, give that employee another $5,000 with what they were asking. If you can't afford it now, we can put in a transition plan. There's always another way to skin a cat. And I've learned that over the years, that when employees are valued, that helps the company. They feel valued, they feel rewarded, they are a team player. And it is true that, companies become an employer of choice when they pay well, because it's not just, the company's there to make money, but the employee is a big part of that in the work that they do and how they contribute to the organization. So that's why I wake up. I wouldn't want anyone to be paid a penny less than $40,000 if that's their salary.
Understood. Okay. Okay. So we know it's a big problem. How big a problem? How big, when we talk about the size of the problem, is there a number for that? Does this cost X dollars to American businesses every year? What's that number?
It costs millions of dollars for businesses every year. So for large organizations that are already in existence, if they don't solve the problem from the root and look at other things besides just the one thing that they've honed in on, they're always going to hemorrhage money every year. They're going to blow their merit budgets. They're going to and not hit their financial goals, which again can erode ROI and profitability. It will lead to employee morale. People are going to leave. It's kind of like a hamster on the wheel. These things will continually happen because organizations are not looking at compensation from a full life cycle. They're looking at errors in pockets or when things pop up. Oh, we have FLSA misclassifications. Oh, this employee is paid below the minimum. So I'm trying to design a system and think of every component of data that could be in an HRIS system and see how we can leverage that data to look at it. How many what is the gender makeup of our organization? What is the ethnicity? What is our, hourly, salary, union, non-union, kind of the state of the state. But once you get into the compensation analytics of it, that's when you want to look at compression. You want to look at performance. You want to look at all of these different things I talked about in the presentation, because you need to have a full spectrum review of your employees, of how they stack up against the pay philosophy, but also peers in the same job, peers in the same grade level, within a department, in different departments doing the same thing, or even globally.
Fair enough. Oh, no, another way of sort of trying to get at this is, all right, have you come up with some even theoretical ROI numbers for a business to adopt this? So they're going to say 5%, 10%, because that, to me, that looks like it would drop directly to the bottom line of the business. And every business wants to be more profitable. So have you worked out that profitability number for adopting the solution?
I started looking at that at the last organization I was with, just from having like real time numbers, and it actually they were profitable, but their profitability was eroding. And what I did was I did a look back analysis to say, this is what actually happened in there. We actually spent 6%, not 3%. And this is what happened. And when I built a model for them to use the merit matrix, looking at comp ratio and performance rating and projecting over the next 2 or 3 years, their profitability actually increased from 5% to 30 to almost 30%. It was like 28 or 29, because what finance was not accounting for was at the time was 20% of the population received promotions, and the average promotion percent was like 18%. There were other increases that accounted for 10% of the population. The average increase was 8%. So this is how they were blowing their budget every year, spending 6% instead of the 3%, because finance just took the total salary line, multiplied it by 3%. So when they saw that, okay, we need to account for a bigger budget, they weren't necessarily on board. So I said, let's split the difference. Let's do 4.5 and then work our way to 6%. Because if you're still going to promote like you do and give other types of increases like you do, you're always going to blow your budget on your 3% merit budget, and you're not going to hit your financials. So when I did that for the business line that I was working for, again, it went from 5 to almost 30 in about 1.5 years, because we did a transition in that same time, and our profit numbers helped the company realize its numbers where other business units did not. Okay. So that was just that one organization, but I could do a, deeper dive, but that was just kind of.
That makes sense. Okay. So how are you going to market this platform? How are you going to go get clients? Tell me more about the marketing and sales strategy.
Well, I have a network of past employers that I've worked for who I've worked with on solving some of these issues. So this would definitely solve. I would reach out to my network for companies that I haven't worked for, but they will be in need of this, because we're always connecting and collaborating. What are you doing about compensation? Like, how do you calculate that? Or or looking at a job that we have that's similar in the organization, how would you define this FLSA status? So I would reach out to my network to say, I have a tool, we, keep in touch, that I think would help, well, which I know would help their organization, because every organization is always trying to put bubble gum and Band-Aids on these same issues. So
Sure.
I know it's a way to solve their problem. So network campaign, email marketing campaign, doing demos and webinars of, if you have these components of data, look at how you can tell the story with numbers and data.
Yeah. I guess along the same earlier constructs, I think you're certainly addressing a real problem. I don't know how big the problem is. Do most organizations realize how much they're losing on profitability in this process?
You may not necessarily know if it's being made up in other areas of the organization, but pay is a big component, because depending on how many employees you have and your salary and your bottom your salary line, how many executives do you have? How much are they paid? They are typically paid in the high 6 or 7 figures. So if profitability is made up in other areas, they may not see it, but think about the potential of maybe even doubling that profitability if they were able to solve for these other areas that they're not necessarily looking at, or maybe they're not aware of because nobody's looking at it. But if someone can come in and
I mean, if you looked at a business model where you could go in and say, zero cost up front, and you pay me 50% of any increased profitability over the next 12, 8, whatever the time frame is. Have you looked at some other models like that rather than just subscription?
I have, thought about, okay, zero up front, but then on the back end, that's a little, the curve is not as steep, but there's a way to get there once they see the value at the end of that particular term. So that's an option as well. I was just talking about kind of like the standard, but there are other options that I've definitely considered for a payment structure, and that's definitely viable.
Yeah, no, I guess my concern is I'm not sure businesses have a good handle on how much money they're hemorrhaging in this process. So if you've got an opportunity to go in with a no risk proposition and then get them to pay you well, if you're increasing their profitability that much, then you should be able to make out like a bandit, and then hopefully sell them a piece of software and go on to the next one. That's kind of my
right.
thought.
I mean, that's another way. Yeah, that is definitely another way, because it's like you don't know what you don't know until someone shows you. So the way I'm building it, it could definitely kind of open their eyes, like, oh my gosh, think of the additional monies that we could have in our pocket, because when you're doing bubble gum and Band-Aids, it's really a short-term fix, and it's just kind of the same thing over and over that's going to be perpetuated. And either and don't fix it, or you don't know and you try to fix it, but it's a recurring theme, just a recurring theme.
Okay. Well, I'm certainly I would say in a bigger sense, the big thing, you gave me a lot of information about your company, and I get that, and a lot about how you're building your tech. I really want to see a lot more business analysis, because that's understanding the ROI when you go to approach a target customer. First thing they're going to ask you is, what's it going to do for me? Is it going to help me? Is it going to help me make money? Is it going to save me money? Is it going to help me bolster my, create or bolster my brand, or does it satisfy some regulatory requirement? And I don't see regulatory as an issue, other than obviously compliance could be an issue. You get IRS fines. So I guess there's an argument there. But showing them how they can either save money or make money on by doing this, in this case save, I think, would be really compelling. So if you could figure out an ROI for them and sort of tell them, hey, I think I can save you X, Y, Z, and I'm willing, and with a business model that I'm willing to put my put my my reputation on the line, nothing down. There's no risk to you. You just give me 50% of whatever, for the next 3 years, you give me 50% of the increased profitability based on this program. Something like that. I think that would be a hugely compelling business opportunity. The question is, would it become, if you did create the software, preferably, I'm assuming you can automate this with some kind of AI component as well that would help out dramatically. You could create a software application, that actually would create, I think, a venture investable business. My only concern is it sounds like a consultancy. It doesn't sound scalable. It sounds like it's all based on you. And obviously you've got amazing talents and amazing experience, but this business sounds like it's not scalable unless we can make more of you. Is that true?
Yeah. So with the investment, if I was offered the opportunity, that would include hiring staff to assist in terms of the testing, the formulas, because what I've done, and I would say it's about like 90% complete of stuff that I've created in Excel, and I'm using AI just to validate, so it's a matter of this time, at this time, if moving forward with, the additional business analysis, you're looking for to hire staff to work with a SaaS software company, because if I can build it in Excel, a SaaS software company can definitely design it.
Oh, sure.
And make it really nice and pretty. So that's why, even if my consultancy model may not be scalable, I think this automation platform would definitely be scalable in terms of once it hits the market, and it's not just compression, it's not just merit planning, it's not just structure, who's paid below the minimum or whatever. It's a full life cycle of compensation management along with the aligned documents. And that's kind of, I think, what differentiates me, because I'm looking at everything. I'm not just looking at one piece of this or designing a sales program. I've designed a sales program. We can add that too. It's customizable. If a business doesn't want to look at everything, fine, but you have the opportunity to, everything can be automated. And then with the retention, the automation I did for that, it's based on customizable questions that I came up with. But if you want to look at something different, we can definitely do that. Change the thresholds. Everything is customizable, but automated to flag situations that would potentially erode profitability and cost millions that you wouldn't necessarily have to spend otherwise.
Cool. Okay. I mean, again, I love what you're doing. I'm trying to figure out how to make it a venture investable deal at this point. You may have to prove it, create, and then seek, then take an investment to build the software or work out of profitability, and then scale it largely. I mean, it would be really nice to see that. Let's ask the other, I guess the final question is, who would acquire this business? At the end of the day, if you get this up and you build the app and you get to a certain size, who do you see acquiring this business? Because that's the other question investors ask is, how do I get my money back, and how much more money do I get back with it?
I would say maybe being folded into one of the big three. And the reason why I say that, and I mean Aon Hewitt Mercer or Willis Towers Watson, is because if this tool can be led to market and I'm acquired, these three big consulting firms, they deal with global organizations, domestic companies. They account for a huge market share of companies that use them for any amount of services. So this will be a game changer for them to use something that gives you a full life cycle compensation automation to companies. I think that will be a game changer for them.
Okay.
So that's all.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I think it's a big problem. It certainly deserves a solution. I would, as much as possible, get away from the consultancy sort of name and process. You make this into a more scalable business.
Okay.
If you can do that, again, I think there's a great opportunity here.
Okay. Well, I appreciate the feedback.
Oh, and focus a little more on the business case.
Yes. I wrote that
understand
down.
how the business works. Now you understand how it how it scales.
Right.
Wow, wow, wow. That was great. I took a lot of notes. That's why I was off camera, y'all. I had to take some notes. But I got to give it up to these founders. Hester and Danita, I give it up to you because it takes bravery to get in front of investors or an investor and pitch your product, service, or what have you, and listen to that feedback. Even if that feedback is not always favorable to you, it actually are knowledge points, stepping stones to help you get investor ready. But I tell you what, I noticed, Eric, that the time that we gave, the 15 minutes, each founder both went over the 15 minutes. And I realized that there must be a process in how we need to train ourselves when it comes to pitching, especially if there's time. Do you have any insight on that?
Yeah, I always say it's a 10-minute pitch with 10 slides, and only one or two of them are technology and product. I mean, pure and simple. Both of these great, very polished speakers, very interesting, clearly have great business ideas, but they talk too much about more or less, here's how to create my business. I don't need to know how to create your business. I need to know what it does, what technology it uses, and then the rest of the conversation it's about the competitive landscape, it's about the value prop, it's about the business case, the marketing, the sales, the financial projections, exit strategy. 80% of your talk should be about the business, not about the product and tech. So that's where I would have cut out. Both those could have been condensed, I think, on the technology, because I think a lot of entrepreneurs, especially when they first start trying to pitch an investor, the first thing they want to do is prove that they know their trade and their app and their tech at such a level that there can't be any questions. And on a first pitch, I'm largely going to take for granted that it works. I really want to know what kind of business, again, how the business scales, how you create the business from a business model standpoint, and how that scales. That's really more what I need to know. Eventually, we'll dig into, in due diligence, does it actually work? Have you violated any laws of man or nature or things like that? But on the front end, you're really trying to convince me that it's a viable business, not that it's a viable product.
What is that thing that that you often say? It's the five questions that every founder needs to answer for an investor.
Oh, the five questions. Yeah, what are you doing? Who are you doing it to? What's it going to cost? What do I get back? And why should you trust me? Those are really the only 5 questions you have to answer.
Well, that's been great, ladies and gentlemen. I'm really excited about this episode right here. And once again, shout out to the founders. And I want to encourage any other business owner to go to getinvestorready.com. Check out our program, our online program. It's a course. You could take it whenever you like. It's on demand. What else can you ask for? We're doing it right here. Other than that, ladies and gentlemen, it has been a pleasure, and we look forward to seeing you again. And don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe to everyone. Let them know what we got going on, especially in today's climate. You heard? All right, good. See you next time.
Let us know how you enjoyed the show by giving us a like. And don't forget to subscribe to not miss the next episode. Got a question you would like for us to answer? Email us at info@getinvestorready.com. Thanks for watching.